Hey, what's up, everyone? I am SwampKid84, and thanks for tuning into another episode. Guys, the patch notes for update 1.6 have been released, and there's some major news to go through, and I'm going to break it all down here in this episode. No battling in this episode, but I will be recording one later tonight in terms of live battles. But I just wanted to go over everything here, and I've spent a lot of time doing it, so hopefully I'll be able to do a good job of kind of summarizing everything in this update. There is, you know, quite a bit to break down, but I've spent a good time looking over it. So there's a lot of things that I feel like, you know, maybe people weren't expecting. For one, the Alliance missions is one. I think that's going to be a very fun feature, and I'm going to talk about that first. And the exploration updates. A lot of changes are going to be made to drones and how they operate. So going to break down some of this. So let's jump right into it right now. So as you can see here now, as far as the missions, let's start with the Alliance missions here. So basically there's going to be 10 total missions, and they're going to be available at one time, and there's going to be 5 that are in the category of exploration. So, you know, the typical missions that you're seeing now, you know, the little button in the top right that they call the DPG button. You know, the same type of missions you see there, like collect X amount of supply drops, fire this amount of darts, that kind of thing. Those will fit under the exploration missions, and for each one your team will be able to, and this is a team thing, so it'll be, I'm sure the number will be astronomical, but it'll be like collect X amount of supply drops, and it'll be a lot of them, and your team as a whole will probably need to, you know, collect that amount of supply drops in order to get the reward. But everyone will in your alliance will be able to get the reward at that point. But then the other half of the missions, the other 5, are considered in the defense category. So those will be just based on battling. So I'm guessing maybe strike towers will be part of that too. But, you know, obviously battling in terms of like a tournament battle or a friendly battle, that'll be in that category. So each mission is going to show the Alliance member with the top contribution. I think that's a big deal. And basically completing all 5 missions in, you know, they're in either specialization, whether it's the defense or the exploration or both, I would imagine, are going to boost your alliance's weekly reward, weekly rank, and then consequently the reward. So, you know, the higher your rank, the better your reward will be. I'm guessing the incubator will, yeah, your incubator reward will be, you know, a little bit better based on your rank and how good your alliance is completing these missions. So, and your rank will reset each week, and it'll start all over again, and, you know, you'll be able to move up and continue on and hopefully get your reward as big as it is by week's end based on how you did throughout the week. So another thing that I wanted to go over is the next thing on this, the next item on this in this patch notes is the exploration. So basically the normal range of a drone right now, not VIP, just normal range, extends all the way out to 150 meters. But now in that range, in that same 150 meter range, you're going to be able to activate supply drops, special event supply drops, treasure boxes, and strike events. So all of those, you'll be able to access them. Now, one of the things that you know, I have a question about is this statement here. So it says, open them from long range for a portion of the full reward, or move into close range to collect everything. So this statement to me is maybe a little bit unclear, because, you know, does it also apply to the rewards from the strike events? So that's possibly a little bit unclear, but I would imagine so, possibly, not sure, but we'll see. You know, there's little nuances we'll figure out as the update drops on Monday. And the only other thing is that I guess the strike towers are going to look a little bit different. Now, let's go into the battling. as far as like this battle communication section, basically, from what I understand in this section, it's referring to the text that, you know, says damage over time when your dino does damage over time, like right above a dino, you know. Or when it actually says decrease speed, like if you hit, you know, another dino with Thagomizer and it says decrease speed, like that little, you know, the text that just pops up as soon as you do that ability. Those indicators now have a color code, and if I'm not mistaken, I guess I haven't paid too much attention to it because it just flashes so quickly, but they may actually already have some color indicators, but I think they've actually broken down like a, you know, like in an official way. Like red is going to indicate a negative effect, which I think that exists now. Like damage over time, I'm pretty sure shows up as red. Brown is going to be a positive effect, so any kind of buff. Blue is going to be an attack, and turquoise is going to be some sort of defensive move, like you know, instant invincibility, you know, short defense, that kind of thing. Now there's new abilities, and there's quite a few. I think there's 6. Yeah, there are 7 total. So one of them is swap-in nullification, and I think the overall theme of this, guys, is that Ludia is trying to give a little bit more weight to nullify in general. And I think you'll see that as we go through this update and I break down these changes, that I think they're trying to make nullify a little bit more valuable of an ability in general. So, you know, with the swap-in nullification, it nullifies the opponent's positive effects, and, you know, you're bound for 1 turn. You got instant rampage, that's self-explanatory. You got regenerate and run, which is very interesting. Priority, it's obviously in it. You cleanse yourself, you heal 50%, you swap to your next creature. That's very interesting. Now you've got an acute stun, which this does not do damage, but it is a 100% chance to stun, and the cooldown for it is 2. So, and we'll break down one of the key dinos that's going to be getting this ability in just a second. Decelerating strike, there's going to be at least a trio of dinos that I'll show you right now that are going to get this ability, but it's basically just, you know, speed reduced by 50% for 1 turn, and doing just 1 times basic damage. You got lethal swoop, and I believe the unique pterosaurs, one of them gets this. I'm not sure if there's, I think it might be the only one in the game that'll have it at this point, but that's pretty deadly right there. And then you got a cleanse and swoop. Now the first, you know, on first glance when I saw cleanse and swoop, I was like, well, you know, what's the deal with the cleanse? I mean, if you're swooping, if you're swapping out, then why do you need to remove any positive effects? You know, then I realized, oh, well, you could be bound, you could be pinned. So yeah, you definitely, that's a very valuable move. Any sort of lockdown, basically. So let's get into some of the ability updates. So as you can see, distracting now, and when I go through these, I've actually done a little bit of homework here, and I'll point out the dinos that actually get affected by these abilities, by these changes to these abilities. So you got distracting rampage, which now has a delay of 1. The dinos, you know, that are affected by this are going to be Utarenex, Piratators, Spinotoraptor, Monolophosaurus. Those are going to be the dinos that are affected by distracting rampage. Swap-in shattering rampage. So obviously that we're going to talk about Drac Gen 2 here for a little bit. You're going to be bound now for 2 turns as opposed to just 1. So sorry, Drac Gen 2 players, that's a pretty big deal. But there is some good news for you later on when I break down the changes to Drac Gen 2 that'll still make you feel pretty good. But Drac Gen 2 is the only dino that this affects right now, but as you'll see later on, there's one more dino that does get swap-in shattering rampage, believe it or not. Nullifying impact, again with the whole theme of, you know, nullify becoming more valuable. That's what Ludia is really pushing for right now. The cooldown becomes 1 as opposed to 2. That's a big deal. And I know yesterday when I was doing some live battles, I mentioned in that episode that you know, that there was text. If you click on like Monostegatops, for instance, it'll say in the text that the cooldown was 1, and I was speculating, well, that, you know, that's incorrect for right now because I knew that the cooldown was still 2, but it could have been an indication that that it was going to be changed to a cooldown of 1, and it has. So only a day later, I find out that it is in fact being changed. So Monostegatops obviously is impacted by this. Magna Pirator, and we're going to talk about Magna in just a second. Magna players, you need to hang tight. Monomimus, Psychotator, Dilophosaurus, Pteranodon, and Tanny, also Tanny Calagrius. Ready to Crush. Ready to Crush gets a pretty common sense, you know, update. The ability now works for 3 active turns like it's supposed to. In the past, it was actually, you know, you'd activate it, but the same turn that you'd activate it, that counted as one of the 3 turns, which made 0 sense. So now it's actually going to be for 3 additional turns, which is great. The dinos affected by this, Triastronix, Piritator, both of the Baryonyxes, Gen 1 and 2, and Irritators, Gen 1 and 2. Slowing Impact. So Slowing Impact now has a cooldown of 2 as opposed to 3. Now, that means Monostegatops now benefits from a shorter cooldown for Slowing Impact and Nullifying Impact. You got to say that Monostegatops is now one of the stronger dinos in the game. Monostegatops was arguably the biggest winner in the last update as well. You could say Monostegatops is again the biggest winner in this update. So overall, dinos affected by this: Monostegatops, Stegoceratops, Turramalic, Kula, Proceratosaurus, and Amargasaurus. So let's go to Superiority Strike, which this is a big deal here. So Ludia is now, you know, it's applying basically the same principle for stuns in the last update and doing the same to slow abilities. So every slow move is basically now 50%. And this only relates to speed reductions. So, you know, like a speed up strike, like minimal speed up strike, like for Orlithominus, for example, that remains the same. It's still a speed up of 10%, but these are reductions. So if you recall, in the 1.5 update, all stuns became 75%. So it's kind of the same thing here. But although now there's the acute stun for 100%, so, you know, a little bit different now. So several dinos are affected by this, so I don't need to break that down. Now, the one, and also there's a new, I guess, icon for Superiority Strike, which just has like a, you know, looks pretty different. So Swap In Slow also now lasts for 2 turns as opposed to 1. So there's 3 dinos that are affected by this: Diplodocus, Giraffatitan, and Tujangosaurus. I want to go over some of the new creatures. It might take a little while though, so I'm just going to skim through them kind of quickly. But these are the dinos right here, as you can see them. I might zoom in for you just so you can see them a little bit better, because the art is actually pretty nice for them. Scolosaurus, that's a common. Scaphognathus, might actually hit that one on the head with the pronunciation, not sure. That's a rare. Maiasaura is an epic, and another epic is Pachycephalosaurus. Yeah, my pronunciation's down today. Not sure though. I might be totally off. But yeah, Scolosaurus. I might do a separate video on these, but Scolosaurus says is a balanced tank basically. Has some pretty cool moves there. Scaphognathus is a rare. Obviously has, you know, low health. Yeah, I'm probably going to go through these a little bit more in depth in another episode. And then some of the hybrids, these are the ones that were kind of slowly released, you know, on Twitter, in the Jurassic World Alive official Twitter account. You have 2 legendaries, 2 uniques, and 2 epics. And the main highlight is really the 2 unique birds, the first of their kind. And a lot of, 3 of the 4, actually, as it mentions here, are predominantly damage over time kind of dinos. So we'll get into those a little bit. But, you know, Swoop, Swap In Wound, you know, those kind of a bit like lethal, what is it, lethal swoop. Those are going to be a little bit more, you know, it's the game is kind of trending a little bit more in that direction with the addition of those two unique pterosaurs. But let's go down here now, and here's a little bit more information here on like Schoolosaurus, some of the dinos that are going to be getting some of the nullification stuff, you know. Now let's go to the creature balancing real quick, because this is kind of usually the one thing that I just zoom right down to, and I think a lot of people are kind of in the same boat. But I think the main ones that I want to, because I'm not going to touch on each one, but Alunkylosaurus, however you pronounce it, the legendary bird that's been around for a while, that's getting a damage buff. I think a very much needed damage buff. You got Baryonyx, which is getting a health buff, a crit buff, and a damage nerf. Brachiosaurus, as if it didn't have enough health, is getting a health buff and an attack buff. Also actually hit for good damage too. So, but getting buffs in those areas. Darwinopterus is getting 2 nerfs to its health and its attack. Dimorphodon, let me actually scroll down so you can see these. You got Dimorphodon, which is now going to apparently deal the lowest damage in the entire game. Now, let's talk about Dracoceratops for a sec, because basically, as you can see here, Dracoceratops receives an overhaul in order to be a better Drac Gen 2. Really? So a lot of people that aren't Drac Gen 2 fans, obviously yours truly is one of them, but you know, the only reason I say that before everyone says, oh boy, he's a Drac Gen 2 hater, my only reasoning for not, you know, really liking it is that there's not really a reasonable counter for it in the game, and I feel like everything in the game sort of deserves a reasonable counter. I mean, it's really, unless you get lucky and you just happen to swap out your dino, or if you do have a little bit of a, you know, a sense that the other player may do it and you're just doing it to be safe, and, you know, I don't know, but it's definitely a bothersome move, and it's obviously probably the hottest topic for discussion on a lot of, you know, in the Ludia forums and Facebook pages and all that kind of stuff. But so Dracoceratops is actually, and before I even get into this, I'm going to say I like this. I like this these changes that are being made here in regards to the swap-in Shattering Rampage. Dracoceratops is going to get it instead of the swap-in stun, but it's, you know, it's going to be a better Drac Gen 2. Because not only can it do defense Shattering Rampage, it can regenerate and cleanse the bound effect and leave the very next turn. So that's huge now that swap-in Shattering Rampage now, you know, forces your dino to be bound for 2 turns. First of all, that's going to hurt Drac Gen 2. However, and I like the fact that it's 2 turns now. That's great. But Dracoceratops can get around that by cleansing and being able to swap out the next turn. So in effect, Dracoceratops is kind of like the old Drac Gen, old Drac Gen 2, I guess. It's still around right now, technically, for a few days. But so Dracoceratops is going to have the edge there in being able to do the swap-in Rampage, Shattering Rampage, be able to cleanse and leave in 1 turn, similar to what Drac Gen 2 is able to do right now. But on top of it, it has the new acute stun ability, and it'll have a regeneration as well. We already mentioned that's tied with the cleanse, and a rampage. So I expect a lot of Drac Gen 2 players who, you know, love that strategy to now devote their resources to go after Dracoceratops. So you're basically looking at your new most annoying dino in the entire game. But it's also worth noting that Dracoceratops, as a consequence to this, what's overall a buff, is getting nerfs to its health, its damage, and its speed. So that's notable. As for Drac Gen 2, it's going to keep the swap-in Shattering Rampage, but it's going to do less damage, and it can't, you know, cleanse the bound effect the way that Dracoceratops did. It also doesn't have the acute stun, but I'm glad the developers found a way to keep the Drac Gen 2 strategy in there for the people that do like that strategy, but just making it, you know, more interesting and giving it to a legendary dino, most importantly. I think that's that makes more sense. It's going to be harder to get the, I mean, really, Dracoceratops is still fairly easy to get the ingredients for, but applying it to a legendary dino that, you know, it'll still be a little bit harder to create and level up, I think makes a lot of sense, so I'm happy about that. We're going to go down here to Magnapirator. Now, Magnapirator is going to get a health buff, thank the Lord. And armor piercing impact now becomes distracting impact. And that's a huge deal. That's going to allow Magnapirator to hang around for a lot more, because it's going to have more health. It's going to be able to distract. So Magnapirator will be able to maybe last an extra turn or two, who knows, if you play it really well. And that's just huge. And then remember also, nullifying impact only has a cooldown of 1 now. So so Magnapirator fans, I was totally one of them, believing that Magnapirator, just based on its you know, how rare its components were, needed to be much stronger than it was. So good job by Ludia to hear the fans on that one and make a change to what is really a hard dino to believe it. But believe me, I've had my struggles. I'm trying to put them together right now. Monomimus is another notable one to talk about. Now, while Monostegatops has seen significant buffs in the last 2 updates, Monomimus has gotten 2 significant nerfs in the last 2. Its speed is now 127, and even though that's, you know, not, it wouldn't seem like much, it's huge, because that puts it below Indoraptor and Magna. So that's pretty significant. It puts it in a different class, that where 2 dinos that it may see fairly often are now faster than it. And remember, Magna only has a cooldown of 1 on the Nullify now, so that gives it that makes it a pretty decent matchup. Excuse me, can't even talk today. Makes it a decent matchup for Magna versus Monomimus. Oranosaurus is getting what it calls a significant damage buff. Piratator is getting a health and a damage buff. Armor Piercing Rampage is going to be replaced by Armor Piercing Impact. So now it has 2 special abilities available in turn 1. Pretty significant. And so now the following 3 dinos are going to all have Decelerating Strike as their basic move. This is kind of what I alluded to a little bit earlier in the episode. Sinoceratops, Utarenex, and Utah Sinoraptor. Now, remember, Distracting Rampage is has a delay of 1 now, right? Yeah, it has a delay of 1 now. But in exchange for that, I know a lot of people were kind of fearing that Utarenex was going to get a nerf in terms of that. It does get a little bit of an attack increase, and the basic attack becomes Decelerating Strike. So I know that's probably not going to make up for the fact that Distracting Rampage has a delay of 1, but if you think about it, you know, Utarenex, I think, is still going to be very strong. And Utah Sinoraptor also getting the Decelerating Strike. So yeah, that's really it, guys. I just wanted to go over some of these major updates. This is a big deal. A lot of significant changes here. Let me know what you think about the change to Dracoceratops, him getting the that dino getting the swap-in Shattering Rampage and the acute stun and all that cool stuff. That's obviously going to be a very popular dino. I think a lot of people are going to pour their resources into that now as their new as their new Drac Gen 2, I guess you could call it. And you know, Magnapirator also, Monostegatops. Really, those are the 3 big winners: Magnapirator, Monostegatops yet again, and Dracoceratops. Dracoceratops, Magnapirator, and Monostegatops. Okay, yeah, those 3 are really the big winners in this update. You know, at least the ones that stand out to me right here. But that's all. That's really all I've got for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and please hit the subscribe button for some Jurassic World Alive content. I appreciate it, guys. Have a good one. See ya.